Hey everybody, Matthew Coller and Sam Ekstrom here, Purple Insider, following the Minnesota Vikings 19-17 win over the Detroit Lions. And let me put it this way, just to start off, Sam, an uninspiring 19-17 win in a game where the Minnesota Vikings were favored by 10 points and looked to have this game wrapped up. And then Alexander Mattison fumbles, the Detroit Lions score, and it took a 54-yard field goal and a game-winning drive from Kirk Cousins in order for the Vikings to go to 2-3. Sam, give me, before we get into some of the details, your big picture takeaway from this Minnesota Vikings win.
I think they deserved to be scared the way they did at the end, with the way they attacked this game conservatively, failure to take advantage of opportunities. Again, going up against a horrific quarterback performance and doing very little with it. Conservative play into the half. Conservative play when they had a chance to ice the game with one first down. And don't get me wrong, we would have been talking about an uninspiring win at 16-6. We would be having the same conversation. It only worsens when you look at the meltdown in the final minutes of this game. Field goal, conservative play calling, fumble, touchdown, 2-point conversion, and you tip your hat to the field goal drive that set it up. Adam Thielen, 2 catches. Greg Joseph bounces back, game-winning kick from deep. That was impressive. But who did it come against? A listless Detroit Lions team with nothing to lose. That's why they went for 2, because it's, for them, this is fine. Detroit fans are probably like, that was fun. That was a fun game. We battled at the end. We lost. We get a high draft pick next year. The Vikings are only trying to survive right now. And I'm not sure style points should matter in the NFL, but this is a game where the lack of style points, where you get a 0 out of 10, has to lead to some concern, and certainly doesn't do a lot to alleviate the heat on Mike Zimmer at this point.
It is certainly true that a win is a win in the NFL, and every team gets paid for it and all those cliches that they use. But when you have an opportunity to blow out a team, where it seemed like fairly early on in this game that the Detroit offense was not going anywhere against the Minnesota Vikings pass rush, especially, we saw another very good performance from Everson Griffen, Danielle Hunter. They were getting to Jared Goff, and he also did some Jared Goff things. He fumbled the ball. He threw a very crazy interception to Eric Kendricks, where couldn't quite figure out who he was trying to throw the ball to, but Eric Kendricks made a great play and intercepted him. So Goff gave the Vikings offense plenty of opportunities to step up to the plate and make this game a blowout. And yet what we saw was very conservative play calling. Outside of one big run for Alexander Mattison, they really lacked consistency in the run game and averaged less than 3 yards a carry on all of the other runs in this game. We saw Kirk Cousins, even without a ton of pressure, it was not like Cleveland at all, still checking down, throwing underneath. And then he said after the game, well, Detroit was mixing up their coverages and playing too deep. Those things happen in the NFL on a week-to-week basis. And yet this offense has gone from very exciting in the second half of the Bengals game, all throughout the Arizona game and Seattle. It was about the most exciting that this offense has been in some time, to the last couple of weeks that they've really tightened up and they have not been able to create very many explosive plays at all. And after an early explosive play to Justin Jefferson, even Justin Jefferson's targets mostly disappeared. He ended up with only 8 in this game. And I think, Sam, that they have a lot of things to solve on offense, but it really starts with an overall philosophy where they don't push it at the end of the first half, and the crowd here at US Bank Stadium booed. And then even after they caused the turnover, it was a very conservative play calling, and they end up having to punt the ball back away to Detroit. So this felt like they were decidedly the better team in the game, but did everything they could to make sure Detroit had their chance.
Yeah, it was sort of like the Browns last week, who kept letting the Vikings into the game and then eventually won. The Vikings kept inviting the Lions back here. And I think the offense got booed off the field on 4 or 5 drives. It was not just an isolated thing. You know, one game can be chalked up to an anomaly. 2 games becomes a trend. And now this offensive regression is a concern. Now, we also saw a positive trend earlier in the year when they had 3 solid games on offense. So will the real Vikings please stand up? on offense and defense, because the two have flip-flopped. I mean, the offense was carrying this team early and just not getting it done at the end. Now the defense is playing better, albeit against very bad quarterback performances. And I don't know how much the defense has to do with making those quarterbacks bad, just because neither of them have a great track record of being good. So it's hard to know where this defense stands. But I know one thing, the sort of defeatist play calling and philosophy, end of half, end of game, that's frustrating and happens time and again, letting other teams back into contests they have no business being in. So maybe the Vikings getting scared the way they did will be a wake-up call for them about how to approach these situations down the road. They do survive to Carolina, and they have a chance to be 500. That's the only thing you can take out of this, is that the season was already on life support, and now you've got a faint pulse, and you can maybe still be revived.
And it's interesting, to be this early in the season still and be playing survive and advance. I mean, this isn't the playoff race in week 15 or something like that. It feels like the season is on the brink today and was on the foot of Greg Joseph, who missed the 49-yarder short. And Sam, we've done that with our golf shots before. You kind of dip the shoulder and chunk it a little bit. But going into the 54-yard field goal, you could see why maybe there wasn't a ton of confidence after he had left the 49-yarder short, but he comes through at the end of a game where he never should have had to come through at the very end. On the defensive side, you're right. For the most part, they played well. But even then, Mike Zimmer after the game said, the run defense, he defended them last week against Cleveland. He did not defend them today. They allowed DeAndre Swift to break off some very impressive runs and keep Detroit drives moving and keep their offense at least somewhat in this ball game, even though overall they were not very impressive. So from a big picture standpoint, the Vikings are able to move on. From the micro, this game had a few interesting developments too, one of which that Christian Darrisaw played football for the Minnesota Vikings, their first-round pick. He was mixed into several drives and then taken back out. Rashad Hill came back in. Sam, I think this is a sign that we're going to see Christian Darrisaw starting left tackle, if not next week, very soon.
No doubt about it. This is part of the ramp up for him. And like Mike Zimmer said, he's only had 12 practices. He still has a lot to learn about the game in addition to getting healthy. I think he's healthy now, and now he just needs his mind to sort of catch up with the physical part of the game. And I think the fact that he didn't fall on his face and looked pretty competent and was not a liability tells me that his role is going to increase against Carolina. I don't know if he starts or not. I'm not sure it matters. I think we might see him play maybe half the drives against Carolina. And then, hey, after the bye, if he hasn't had any setbacks, I think he's your starter. And Rashad Hill continues to struggle. He was a great story. We both wanted to believe in him, but it just hasn't worked out for Rashad Hill. And I think it's time to pass the baton.
No, it has not. And the other thing, it seems the Vikings have made the decision that Everson Griffen is going to be their guy, and he's going to take the majority of the snaps. The right decision. Everson Griffen has been playing great. He gets a strip sack today, had another sack in the game. He's looked a lot like the old Everson Griffen. And that, at least for that move, they've made a lot of moves. Some have worked, some haven't, but that one looks like an A+ for the Vikings so far. Now, DJ Wanham did get a sack later in the game, but maybe that becomes his role as sort of a situational guy to work in late. But it seems like Everson Griffen, Danielle Hunter back to old times on the defensive line.
Yeah, Griffen looks phenomenal. And I think if you just generally say Wanham was getting 50 snaps and Griffen was getting 30, just flip-flop that. Give Griffen those extra 20 snaps where he can probably generate 3-4 pressures among those snaps and maybe create a strip sack like he did today. It's amazing how good he looks after not doing a lot in the offseason, having kind of a tough 2020. He looks really rejuvenated. And I know they want to keep him fresh. They want to keep his snaps down so he doesn't wear down. But it's hard when you need to win every game. It's hard to resist playing him because of how good he looks. And he put Penei Sewell, the rookie, on skates today.
He did on several different occasions for sure. Now, Delvin Cook did not play. Alexander Mattison ends up playing. This ankle injury seems like it's going to continue on. And next week they play at Carolina. That's on grass. I don't know if that makes any difference, but Alexander Mattison overall, a good performance. His numbers look good, but it was kind of one big run that he broke off, and then the fumble at the end, which he said he's got to be better at knowing situational football. But you talk about a trend for this team. It seems like part of the trend is not really being able to finish off games necessarily, or to be able to come through when they're supposed to at the biggest moments, or to know the situational football. That just seems like it's becoming part of who this team is.
Yeah, the before half fiascos just continue to haunt this team. And today it wasn't as extreme. They didn't give up like 2 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes, but they do give up a field goal and then decline the opportunity to respond when they have a timeout and 40 seconds and not needing that much field. We've seen teams do this multiple times on a weekly basis in the NFL. You don't need that much time to drive the field, and you're taking on the Lions. There's not a really formidable defense back there. And this team says in one breath they love to double dip going in and coming out of halftime, and then they sometimes choose not to do it. So I just want to see more consistency in philosophy and overall consistency for this team. The defense and offense have not been complementary at all this year, and I think when you have instability on both sides, that's going to happen. They're not always going to be synced up.
Okay, last question for you. Does a win take any pressure off of everyone surrounding the Vikings?
No, I mean, if it had been a 40-point win today, then maybe that buys you a little bit of leash off of Carolina. But I think today is either neutral or negative for those that might be on the hot seat. And if you lose badly to Carolina, I think you're in serious trouble. If you lose a tight win to Carolina, I think there's certainly a discussion to be had. I'm of the persuasion that there's just not a ton awaiting you in the second half of the year if you do make a coaching change. I'm not sure who takes the reins. I'm not sure what like young players would be elevated to sort of usher in the new generation. So it's a little easier said than done just to fire the coach.
Well, the season, though, still seems very much on the brink as they go to Carolina next week. Of course, we'll have our usual Wednesday video from TCO Performance Center, our daily podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Purple Insider, and purpleinsider.substack.com for our written work from TCO Performance and reacting to this game as well. So we will catch you next time on Purple Insider.